So in 2007, our luncheon speaker this morning was part of a troika of authors who produced an article that had as much of an impact on me as anything we've ever published in the Networker. It did for psychotherapy what Moneyball did for baseball. It cut through all the orthodoxies, antiquated theories, and sheer blather that often dominates our field, and illuminated the question of therapeutic effectiveness in the way I had never seen anybody do that before. Scott and his co-authors took a look at the question of what separates the very best therapists from the rest of us. We already knew from the research of people like Bruce Wampold and others that whatever puts these therapists at the top of their game, whatever the true believers in empirically supported therapy may say, it's not any particular intervention or model. So what is it that makes these super shrinks better than everybody else? So here's Scott, our very own Bobby Bean, who will explain to you how to go from being just okay or even ordinarily good to really, really good.
Oh, thanks, Rich, for that introduction. I'm so pleased to be with you all, be able to chat about the work that our colleagues and I are doing on this subject of excellence. It really is an audacious title if you think about it. How can we be excellent at the work we do? And so before I talk about the steps to excellence, I want to give a nod to how effective we already are. Most studies of psychological treatments conducted over the last 30 years, the average treated person is better off than 80% of the untreated sample in most studies. Just take a moment and let that sink in. This is the way researchers speak to each other. They did not say that we had an 80% success rate, right? They're always comparing the treated group to the untreated group. So in a room full of untreated people, the one person who gets your care is going to be better off than 80% of those who did not. Are you with me here? This is a phenomenal effect size. It is equal to coronary artery bypass surgery. Is that amazing? It is 4 times the effect of fluoride in water. It's 27 times the effect of aspirin as a preventative for heart disease and stroke. We should put you guys in the water, is what we should do, right? You just turn on the faucet, a little therapist pops his head out, says, hey, how the hell you doing? All right? If we can go back to the slides here, average clinician achieves outcomes on par with success rates in tightly controlled, randomized clinical trials. This is very good news because most of the people you work with don't look like the people that are in randomized clinical trials. And so here, you're working with so-called messy clients, clients where comorbidity is the rule, and again, the data is really quite positive. What you do on a day-to-day basis works, it works quite well, and what is the pièce de résistance for me is that you accomplish these effects with a far more tolerable side effect profile. If there were an ad for what you do on TV every day, it wouldn't have to be followed by a 1-minute caveat that said, may cause diaphoresis, sweating, dry mouth, your hair to fall out, or an erection lasting 4 hours. And if we don't start here, then when I start to talk about excellence, it can be quite discouraging. So let's just assume that we've all entered the Olympic trials. You've made it through the trials. You do good work with your clients. Would you do me a favor and turn to the person next to you, shake their hand and say, dang good job? Would you do that? But if in this increasingly competitive atmosphere in which we live, if we want to survive, average is not going to be good enough anymore. Because as Thomas Friedman said in a recent article, average is over. Average is over. Used to be, you could do an average job and get an average wage. But not now, Friedman said, not a month ago in the New York Times, because employers have access to so much other cheap and above average labor. Are you with me here? We've gone from 60 to over 400 different treatment models in the last 50 years or so. 10,000 how-to books have been published during the same time period. Now this is just a small editorial comment, but let me say, any field that needs 10,000 books to describe what it's doing doesn't know what it's doing. really. In addition, 145 manualized treatments for 51 of the 397 possible diagnostic groups in the DSM. And again, from the outside, if somebody were to come from another planet, you would have to agree we've made a huge amount of progress. We really have. So many more treatments for so many more problems, etc. The problem with all of this is that when you compare the effect size going all the way back, when you compare the effectiveness of our work all the way back to 1976 when the first meta-analytic research was done, all the way forward to 2011, there has been absolutely no improvement in treatment outcome. None, zero, zero, zip. If you look at the Olympics, for example, in the Olympics, the outcome for every single Olympic event, every single one, over the last 50 years has improved, in most cases by 50%. Today's best high school running time in the marathon beats the 1908 gold medal winning time by more than 20 minutes. In other words, they are running faster. Us, no improvement. You know, it's a drag, really, when you think about it. In the Tour de Treatment, we're riding on a stationary bike. We're pedaling like mad. We're just not going anywhere. Take a look at this picture, by the way. This is some work during the rough same time period when psychotherapy as an art and science really exploded. These are pictures of ballerinas going back to the 1960s all the way forward to 2003, doing two different standard positions in ballet. Now, if you look at the leg position of those ballerinas, you're going to notice something over time. In other words, they have improved, they've gotten better, they've stretched their performance. Once again, us, no difference. And the question really is, why? So how is it that we haven't gotten better at what we do? The guy who's done the most in this particular area is the gentleman that Rich Simon just mentioned, and his name is K. Anders Ericsson. He's a Swedish psychologist living in warmer climes at the moment, southern Florida. But he's done work for the last 30 years, and the truth is, as a clinician who's done therapy for now 25 years myself, I didn't know anything about K. Anders Ericsson's work. I stumbled across it while reading a magazine in a flight home from Europe. And he has some ideas about why most of us remain average. I want you to give it a moment's thought here, because many of us spend more time on the job than we do with our families. And the idea that we remain average over the course of our careers has to at least sting a little bit. And so he's done some research on this subject. Will you do me a favor? If you have a piece of paper and a pen, can you grab it real quick? Because what I would like to do is give you a quiz. Here is the question. Compared to other mental health professionals within your field with similar credentials, how would you rate your overall clinical skills and effectiveness in terms of a percentile? Where 50% would be average, 75% would be above average, 25% would be below average. Where would you rate yourselves? Just go get the number in your... Okay, that's question number one. Here's question number two, 2A. 2A is, what percentage of your clients experience significant symptom relief or reduction? What percentage get better, in other words? However you might define that, what percentage get better from 0 to 100? That's question 2A. 2A. Question 2B. 2B is, what percentage stay the same? Now, if you can get it, we're going to have 2C, and the A, B, and C need to add up to 100. All right? So 2C is, what percentage get worse during treatment with you? What percentage get worse? Get those numbers in your head. Make sure they all add up to 100. Walfish, McAllister, and Lambert, they actually did this survey with people across the United States, a broad representative sample of psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, marriage and family therapists in every state in the union. They asked them to estimate their effectiveness and the responses to these three questions. Here's what they found first. No differences in how clinicians rated their overall skill level and effectiveness between the various disciplines. In other words, no particular discipline had a corner on hubris or low self-esteem, as the case may be. Remember, the question here is, why is it that most of us remain average rather than getting better? Here's what he found. Look at this. The average clinician rated themselves at the 80th percentile. This is sort of like Lake Wobegon on crack, really. This is everybody looking in the mirror and saying, damn, that is really good. at the 80th percentile. If your number is at the 80th percentile, you're either really good or you need professional help, frankly. And if you think you're really good, this may explain in part why we are not getting any better. Look at the next one. On average, none of themselves rated themselves below average. Let that sink in a bit. Where are all the below average people? I'll bet at home you could point to a few right in your community. Where'd they all go? Well, with regard to success rates, let's look at question number 2A. 2A now. The answer you gave, the average clinician believed that 80% of their sample improved as a result of being in therapy with them. Nearly a quarter of the sample believed that 90% or more of their clients improved. Nearly a quarter. And half of the sample reported that none of their clients deteriorated within their care. Here's what we know. Effectiveness rates vary tremendously between clinicians, but in tightly controlled studies of effectiveness, the average clinician achieves a reliable change with about 50% of their clients. Now take a look at your answer to question 2A. If it's above 50%, again, either you're really good or there is an adjustment that needs to take place in our esteem of ourselves. Number two, therapists, the data show us, consistently fail to identify deterioration in our cases. 25 years of data actually indicate that about 10% of our clients deteriorate while in our care. So if you look at question 2C, if your number is lower than 10%, you're probably missing clients who are deteriorating. The last person who did this work was Scott Hannon. Scott Hannon did a study in 2005. All he did was ask clinicians to identify on their caseloads the clients that were getting worse. He told them the base rate. He said it's 10%. In this study, 500 clients were involved, 8% deteriorated, about 40. Therapists in the sample identified one deteriorating case correctly. Are you getting the drift? And are you seeing where we might be able to improve? Where the edge of our performance is? Yes, we do great work. We do great work. We really do. But there are areas where we don't stretch our abilities over the course of our career.